Greetings from Costa Rica. I hope you're doing well. My name is Matt Rosensteel, and I'm owner-broker of Coldwell Banker Pacific Realty based here in Playa Junquial, Guanacaste, Costa Rica. As always, it's my pleasure to welcome you to this Thursday live chat here on my channel with our topic today. We're going to be discussing what you should do immediately after buying property in Costa Rica. We'll go over a 6-bullet point checklist and cover some of the major issues that you need to handle right away to ensure that your property ownership is going to start off smoothly. Those 6 points that we're going to cover are the following. First of all, covering your utility bills and getting them transferred to your name, paying your taxes and updating the municipality on ownership. We'll go to insuring your property, securing your home, finding a property manager, and we'll even briefly touch on getting a bank account. Now, this isn't going to be a comprehensive list of absolutely everything that you have to do to successfully own a property here, but more than anything, I wanted to give comments so that if you have just purchased property, you've got a basic understanding of the immediate things you need to handle, and I'll give you some tips on how to best handle those. Again, my name is Matt Rosensteel. I'm a realtor, and if you're interested in moving to Costa Rica, do be sure to email me at matt@cbpacificrealty.com. Today is December 1st. I am always live on Thursdays at noon Costa Rica time. We'll be discussing all different aspects of moving to Costa Rica and living here in paradise, from taxes through cultural issues, even a little bit on the cultural side and everything. But anyhow, stay tuned for our discussion here of what you should immediately do after buying property here in Costa Rica. Stay tuned. Hey folks, it's Costa Rica Matt here, joining you live from Playa Junquial. As always, we have a new angle on the office, and it's actually an extremely exciting day because in just 1 hour, the Costa Rica men's national team is going to face off with Germany to see if they can progress out of their World Cup group. A lot of people may think that Costa Rica has absolutely no chance. And before we get to our broadcast about our real estate topic, I did want to give a quick overview of Costa Rica's recent World Cup history because there's some important context for people to understand. So this year, Costa Rica is in a group with Spain, Germany, and Japan. It was the absolute group of death in the World Cup draw. Back in 2014, Costa Rica also drew an incredibly difficult group. They drew in that year Uruguay, Italy, and England, 3 world powerhouse teams. And back in 2014, pretty much everyone in the world expected that Costa Rica wouldn't be able to make it out of that group. Well, Costa Rica beat Uruguay 3-1. They beat Italy 1-0, and then they tied England 0-0 to advance at the absolute top of their group that year. They then beat Greece in the round of 16. They went to penalties in that match, and they played the Netherlands in the round of 8. Again, this is in 2014. So they had this absolutely miraculous run all the way to the round of 8, where they tragically lost to Holland in penalties. This year, again, they absolutely started off on the wrong foot. They lost to Spain 0-7. They then beat Japan in their group, and today they have the chance to advance. And so if Costa Rica can pull off a miracle here at 1 p.m. and beat Germany, you will see the entire country immediately shut down and a party break out absolutely everywhere because football matters so much to Costa Ricans, and the possibility of getting out of this World Cup group would be an absolute miracle. So really, we're all pulling for the Costa Rica men's national team today and hoping they can pull another miracle like 2014, when the country was led largely by Keylor Navas, a heroic goalie who made some incredible saves. We'll see if they're able to replicate that miracle and advance on to the knockout stages of the World Cup. To move on to our topic, though, today we're again covering 6 things that you really need to focus on accomplishing once you've bought property here in Costa Rica. We're going to start out by discussing your utilities and getting them into your personal name. And first of all, let me say that this is one area where people are often too panicked and really they feel a sense of urgency that might not be quite there to get utilities into their own name because of the way things work in other countries. So first of all, it's important to understand that utility bills here, just like everywhere in the world, are usually paid in arrears. So if you've just purchased a property and you closed on December 1st, the next electrical bill is probably going to be usage for which the seller is entirely responsible. You're being billed on December 1st for electricity that was actually consumed well before closing. And in most real estate deals here, you'll see that there's a utilities holdback created to make sure that even though there will be the seller's electricity there that should be paid, you've got funds to cover that to ensure that as a buyer, you're only responsible for paying your utilities from the closing date forward. Now that can get confusing and you all have to work out a prorated to the date way to resolve those utility bills between prior to closing and after closing. But the nice thing is, what you definitely should do as a buyer is just ensure that the bills and your utilities are kept on. You can pay electric, internet, and water bills at a huge number of places in Costa Rica in these rural communities. Supermarkets accept payment for bills. The local utility offices themselves will accept payment for the other services that they're not. And so right after you've closed on property, you can go to any one of these offices and look at present the contract numbers to the cashier. Just make sure that those bills get paid. And if it turns out that the bill you pay corresponds to the seller's responsibility, then you can get reimbursed from the holdback. But just make sure you keep paying these bills because many have very strange dates that they're issued. Next, just to quickly touch on the electrical and water providers. In our area, Guanacaste, the primary electrical provider, who is also providing most of the internet connections now in the area, is Cope Guanacaste. They purchase electricity from ICE, the national producer, and distribute it locally. So in order to pay your electric bill and probably, or in many cases, your internet bill, you're going to be going to Cope Guanacaste, whose offices have a giant CG on them. Your water bills are going to be through an ASADA or through the National Water Ministry, AYA. So you have to work with those people to make sure your water bill is paid. In many communities, your water bill will be a simple 3-digit number because communities are so small and there are so few people on the water system. But definitely, you should have received all of these contract numbers, the electric, internet, and water bills during your due diligence period, meaning you've got these contract numbers to continue paying after closing. Now, in order to get these utility bills in your own name or in the corporation name, if you've purchased through a company, really it's as simple as taking your national registry documents, the ones that show you own your property, into the utility office, probably waiting in line for a while and updating them that you now own the property. In some cases, it's easiest to do this with the prior property owner, just because if they want to cancel the service, they can take care of that at the same time. But overall, you really don't have to worry about moving the utilities to your corporation's name or your personal name on any rushed timeline, because as long as you just go to the offices and pay the bills, those utilities will stay on. And really, this isn't a country where a provider is suddenly going to shut off service because they find out someone else has acquired a property, etc. I've known some people who have been paying bills that are under the previous owner's name for years and years and years after they purchase a property. So again, it's not a huge rush to transfer your utilities to your name. It is a rush just to make sure that they stay paid. Next, let's move quickly on to taxes, and really the most urgent taxes after you acquire a property. And what you need to address first will be the situation with your municipality. And in Costa Rica, the municipalities are basically the county capitals. There are 83 counties or cantones. In our area, the municipality is in Santa Cruz. Nicoya is a municipality, Liberia, Carrillo, on and on and on. But anyhow, as the buyer of real estate, one of the most important things that you need to do is update the municipality that you are now the owner of the property. You do so by, first of all, ensuring that the previous taxes are up to date and that the property is completely paid up with the municipality, and then taking those same documents that prove you own the property plus your ID into the municipality and filing some very simple paperwork that says how much you paid for the property, where it's located, what it has, etc., and thereby updating the municipality so that you're the owner in their records. That's very important to accomplish if you want to obtain a building permit, because the municipality will also be handling the permit, and they won't allow you to get one or even advance your application until you've got your taxes up to date and you've filed that declaration of ownership. So it's best to handle that right after closing. This service, updating the municipality and really updating your utilities, are both things that a good attorney's office will handle for you in closing. You'll see that the attorney who helped you close on the property will often also help you then update the service providers, or rather the utility providers, and they'll take care of some of these processes. Even if a lawyer has offered to help you with this, I highly recommend following up with them, because it's one of the many smaller tasks that can often escape lawyers and really sort of slip beneath their attention span. So if you're not hot on your attorney to update the utilities providers, you might easily find that that doesn't happen and you end up in trouble that way. Next, let's move on to insurance. And there's a huge semi-governmental national insurance provider here called INS, or the Instituto Nacional de Seguros. This is a massive body that provides most of the insurance in Costa Rica. They do provide total destruction, homeowners insurance policies, as well as policies for the interior contents of properties and other stuff. However, I would say that the vast majority of expats who are buying property in Costa Rica are working with INS for their insurance. Their total destruction home insurance policies cost about 0.21% of the insured value. Those cover fire, earthquake, flood, et cetera, et cetera. And one thing I wanted to comment on is that very often you would see a lot of people not insure the interior contents of a property simply because, as logic goes here, I think if you have anything that is so valuable in your home that you need to insure it, you might really want to consider keeping that valuable somewhere else, or really not bringing that sort of thing down to Costa Rica just because you see those petty crimes, people sneaking in to take anything they can get their hands on, let alone your incredibly precious jewelry, etc. I think most people don't end up with a policy that protects their own personal goods because of that logic. A, don't bring it to Costa Rica if it's really that valuable. And another component of that logic is that the insurance company is going to be extremely difficult to pursue for a claim for a personal item. And I bet a lot of people have spent so much time and effort trying to get reimbursed for something small, let's say a computer, iPad, any kind of personal item that might actually get stolen from a condo or home here. And very often you're going to find out that the time and effort it would take to fight through the bureaucracy, plus the amount you had already put into your insurance premiums, would mean that it wasn't worth it in the first place to insure the interior contents. And therefore, a lot of people end up only with an insurance policy for their property. INS does have bilingual agents. You can sort of work through their network to find someone who would be able to work with you. Very often, they don't have to do too deep of an inspection of a property or really a long analysis to be able to insure it. I've seen very quick turnaround from their agents. And you can even start the insurance policy process only when you have your closing transfer deed. You don't have to have the National Registry reflecting your ownership. You can say to them, look, I have purchased this property, or I am in the process of buying it. Insure the property as soon as possible and really have the policy active shortly after you've closed. After insurance, let's move on to securing your property. And one of the key points I want to make here is that really I see a lot of people make the mistake of leaving this question to a later date. You're kind of new in Costa Rica. Perhaps it's not the first thing on your mind and you've never owned a property in a tropical country. Well, from day one, you need to start thinking about your security solutions, especially if you live in one of the beach areas that tend to attract the kind of petty crimes I've been talking about, with people stealing gadgets or sneaking in to take valuables from homes. There is no one solution for securing your property in Costa Rica. You will find that there are very few security services that can offer first response and really a protective, complete solution. And in fact, you'll probably find that you have to put together several components of a security plan in order to really keep your property safe. And another key point I wanted to make is that not only is securing your property and keeping people out of the property a big priority, but removing opportunity is a huge priority as well, where if you've just acquired a new home, don't immediately fill it with those valuables that would make an attractive target for someone to sneak in. If it's unfurnished and you're not going to be there for 6 months, just leave it empty with nothing easy to carry and valuable in it. And you can take that 6 months off and sort of develop your security over that time. As soon as you start having renters in the property who might bring their own valuables, or you have your own stuff within the property, you do need to address the security situation. And that can look like a number of strategies. First and foremost, I've talked about privacy on my channel a lot. You don't want a ton of people to look at your property and what you've got going on inside. You want to have a very sort of private lifestyle without too many people coming through, not a ton of random contractors and getting all kinds of unknown people to come through the property. And then your physical security means really have to be the same level of the valuables inside your home. If you don't have anything whatsoever that's worth stealing in your property, you don't even have to lock your doors. But if you're going to come down with cash, laptops, iPods, iPads, etc., then you might need to take measures like iron bars to make it difficult for anybody to sneak in while you're out of the property, safes in every room so that you can store the really highly valuable stuff in a box that's at least harder to get away and take itself. And obviously, there are all kinds of solutions nowadays with ring systems, cameras, alarms, motion sensors, on and on and on. Between all of the strategies you take, you really just have to try and get yourself to where your house and your property is not the low-hanging fruit for those opportunistic thieves operating here in Costa Rica. And that can be a combination of both removing that opportunity, i.e. getting the valuables out, and your combination of security strategies that just make it more difficult for anybody to consider taking something from your property. Next, let's move on to finding a property manager here once you've bought property. And this may be an underappreciated point because in most places in the US and Canada, you could probably find a limitless number of people who could competently handle your property for you, who could give you a really clear administrative picture of the costs and where all the money was going. But that's not necessarily the case in Costa Rica. And the search for a property manager, rather the search for a very good property manager, can take a little bit longer here and be a bit more of a struggle. So I recommend, if you're going to be purchasing property here, and if you plan on leaving it in the hands of somebody else, you should start your property manager search well before closing, and try, in the ideal scenario, to have that manager ready to receive the keys the moment that you close on the property and you need somebody else to handle it for you. I've gotten to a lot of closings where all of a sudden it comes to light that really we have no plan after the closing happens. And in a lot of situations, people aren't renting their home or condo, and therefore really a rental manager per se is not needed. But in a lot of cases, a property manager would make your transition so much easier and more successful that they're worth hiring whether or not you plan on renting the property. When you go looking for a manager, expect to get what you pay for. And I've heard a lot of feedback that property management services are expensive here. And since Anne Marie, my wife, was a property manager for years and years, I can say that they're actually underpaid for what ends up being the responsibility of managing a home or condo here in Costa Rica. You can look to be paying $150 to $250 a month as a flat fee to your manager just to hold the keys, pay the bills, ensure things are running well, manage landscape providers or the pool maintenance guy, etc. And you'll also pay, on top of that flat monthly fee, a commission on rentals if you do that. I just want to say they're worth absolutely every penny. And if you want to set yourself up for the most successful, easy transition here in especially Guanacaste, Costa Rica, you're going to want to hire a talented manager from day one. Pay them a good wage, and they will really give you a great return when it comes to being able to leave your condo, your home in the hands of somebody else, and to feel like they're running it 100% competently and transparently. Finally, one of the last things you need to do if you've just bought property in Costa Rica is opening a bank account. And unfortunately, this is one of the areas where pretty much everyone ends up miserable in Costa Rica, because even with the help of an accountant and an attorney, it's going to take a while for you to open up your bank account, and it's going to take a while for you to learn how to use its functions. And you'll find that there are ridiculous repeat trips back to the bank needed once you've opened it. For example, to pick up your debit card, you'll have to wait in line, usually again, in order to get a little device that helps you access online banking. You'll also have to go to the bank for a second trip. And there's a million other reasons that you will find yourself going to the bank on multiple trips in order to open up an account. And no matter how well one could set you up for this process, I'm afraid to say that it's almost a 100% guarantee. It will be frustrating, and the only solution is to have patience and to find a good accountant and lawyer to work with in opening up the bank account. In many places, you will find that there are accountants who are really just sort of churning out the documents that people need to take to the bank in order to open their account. There are accountants that have great relationships with the bank themselves and can help facilitate things for you. Just be willing to work with whoever it takes to get the documents you'll need and get to an appointment where a banker is waiting to help you open an account. In Costa Rica, Banco Nacional, BNCR, which is Banco Nacional de Costa Rica, and Banco de Costa Rica are the two largest banks. They have the most ATMs and the most branches throughout the country. They also have the most connections to other online services, bill pay, etc. And really, in saying that they are the largest banks, that's about all I can say in trying to positively recommend one course of action or another when it comes to banking here, because they're also two very onerous institutions that are going to want all of your documentation to be in order. They're going to be very much in line and in step with the Costa Rica government on the oversight end. And just like every bank here, they're inefficient. They won't be a totally pleasant experience, and you will find yourself frustrated over the years. I just think that for foreigners working with either Banco Nacional or Banco de Costa Rica can be easiest because of that high quantity of branches, ATMs, and the number of connections they have to online services. For example, I have a Banco Nacional account, and I can pay my local water bill, which is done through a provider with only 500 water meters on it, a small town Asada. And it's incredibly convenient for me to use my account to do a range of things like that water bill. You will find that when you're opening your bank account here in Costa Rica, immediately you don't have access to all of the privileges and connections that nationals do. Those services can be extremely limited for foreigners who've opened up their account. But it is important to get your bank account moving, because I guarantee you will start to see different expenses, and you'll want to be able to send transfers, whether it's to your HOA, your cleaning lady, all kinds of people who are here maintaining your property for you. And the bank account can make life a whole heck of a lot easier. Thanks very much for joining me today, folks. Be sure to tune in to the Costa Rica game here in 30 minutes. I will have more information on Law 9996 next week, John. I promise, absolutely. If you have questions for me, don't hesitate to post them in the comments here. If you're watching as a replay, you can post them as well. Again, my name is Matt Rosensteel. Tune in next week, Thursday, December 8th at noon for another live Costa Rica chat with Costa Rica Matt. Pura vida, folks.